we're going to get started. If I could have your attention, please. One of the great things about having a crowd like this is that it's hard to settle people down to get started. So I'm glad we have a lively group. My name is Kim Reed. I am the chair of the Duke Women's Forum of Washington, D.C., which is a group that brings Duke women together from all across the decades. And I'm happy to say that we actually have Duke women here tonight from 7 decades of Duke, which I think is fantastic, from the 50s through the 10s. And to see everybody in one room interacting with one another, sharing wisdom, sharing Duke stories, that's what the Women's Forum is all about. I'd like to welcome the people who are not Duke alumni. It's wonderful to have you here. We hope that you will come to future programs that we have, and we are happy to share with you any of our future talks or neighborhood coffees or anything like that. And please feel free to ask a Dookie. We're identified by the class number on here, except those of us who don't want you to know when we graduated and wrote it in such a blurry way that it just looked like a blob. Those are Dookies too. I am going to introduce our introducer, who will introduce our main speaker. But let me tell you just a little bit about how tonight is going to go. Our main speaker will speak for a while, and she's going to have us do some fun exercises. And when she finishes, we have 3 very accomplished Duke women who are just going to reflect on what Ora has said and on their own careers, and maybe offer bits of advice that will extend what Ora has said or make it more specific to their career fields. And when they finish just a few minutes of talking, then we're going to open the floor for questions. And as you see, we have it set up kind of like a game show where you have the microphones right here, and I'll put a microphone over there. So if you could go to the microphones when the question and answer session starts, that will be the quickest way to get this done rather than me having to run around with a microphone. So I would like to introduce Rawan Abdulrazik, who is a senior principal at Promontory and was the head of 85 Broads here in Washington, and she will introduce our main speaker. Thank you.
Hi. Quickly before I introduce Ora, I just wanted to go over a quick process issue. I know everybody gets a copy of Ora's book, The Glass Elevator, with your attendance tonight. And so the books are going to be outside on the table. And so after you guys have cocktails and continue networking, you can pick up a copy of the book. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening. Ora is an executive coach at leading global companies in New York, such as American Express, Thomson Reuters, and Oppenheimer funds. Ora has an MBA from Columbia Business School and many advanced coaching certifications. She served as an adjunct professor of management communication at NYU Stern School of Business. As her book, The Glass Elevator, shows, Ora is incredibly passionate about helping women rise to the top. And by the way, all the proceeds from her book go to the nonprofit Dress for Success. By the end of the evening, I know that you too will understand why Ora's clients thrive professionally, get promoted, and many make it to the top list of women's top most powerful women lists. So I can't speak. So let's all welcome Ora. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Actually, if you really want to know about powerful women, just follow her around all day long. I've had this email relationship with her for a couple months, and I can never figure out whether she lives and works in New York or D.C. I'm going, where are you today? Thank you for the warm welcome. A couple of months ago, I was sitting in my kitchen listening to my 16-year-old daughter, Carmel, and her friend Lizzie brainstorm. They were brainstorming about how to raise money for this partner school in Uganda. So first I hear my daughter, Carmel, say, I know. We'll ask Anne Hathaway to come. Lizzie gets all excited. Yes, she said, or we can invite Meryl Streep to come. Now, I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking probably what you're thinking. You gotta be kidding. That's impossible, right? But then I start listening to myself, and I say, wait a second. How come my daughter always gets to see potential and possibility, and all I ever see is the problem. And then I wonder, have I lost something? Have I lost something that my daughter has or that maybe all kids have? That belief that great things can happen. And more than that, that belief that I can make them happen. Are these negative voices in my head getting in the way of having this like robust and expansive sense of potential and possibility? I have a lot of negative voices in my head. Way too many to talk about this evening. But I do want to talk about a couple of them because I've learned from coaching clients that many other women share them. So let me know if these sound familiar. The first negative voice I hear all the time is what I just said, that's impossible. It can't be done. The next negative voice I often hear is like, okay, maybe it can be done, but I can't do it. She can do it. She's thinner, smarter, prettier, richer, has a rich husband, made money with Google, has a nursery attached to her office. But I can't do it. And the last one is, I don't deserve it. Or maybe a little variation on that one is, okay, maybe I deserve it, but I just can't say I deserve it. Am I just a crazy New Yorker? Or does anyone else hear some of these voices? Yeah, so you have some of these internal monologues going on. I'm not alone, thankfully. Here's what I won't do, or what I can't do. I'm not going to even attempt to banish these negative voices from your heads tonight. I haven't banished them from my own head. I think it's a lifelong effort to do that. But what I can do is give you a little strategy. I call it a strategy for success. A strategy so that when you hear those negative voices, you counter them, kind of like an antidote. You counter them so that you have the last, more powerful and more positive word. So my strategy for success is real simple. Step number 1 is get real clear about what you want. Step number 2 is know what makes you unique. And step number 3 is authentically communicate your value. So let me go back for a second. So get real clear about what you want. Now, some people call this goal setting. I'm not a big fan of those words, goal setting. And the reason why is I feel that sometimes when we sit down for goal setting sessions, what other people think we should be doing get in the way. Other people like bosses, mothers, sisters, friends, etc. So I say get real clear about what you want. You can't get anywhere until you're clear, and you have to weed out what everyone else is doing while you're getting clear about what you want. The next thing is know what makes you unique. Something a little bit challenging sometimes for women. And note that when you figure out what your greatest strength is, you also know where you're kind of meh, you know? And when you know that, that's important too, because that's exactly where you seek support. And the last piece is authentically communicate your value, because if people don't know what makes you unique and what you can contribute, how are they going to seek you out? How are they going to find you? So I find that when you follow these 3 steps, those negative voices get a little quieter up here, and suddenly problems dissolve into possibility. So let's start by talking about that first voice. And that's impossible. There's no way this can be done. And I want to tell you about when I first took on this big loud voice in my head. I was actually working out in a gym in Tokyo, Japan. I lived in Tokyo for the 4 years after college. I think I was compensating for the 18 years I spent growing up in Cleveland, Ohio. Dull. So I'm working out in the gym, and this big hulk of a guy comes over to me. He looks kind of like Mr. Clean, although picture an Asian Mr. Clean. And he looks me up and down, and I say, excuse me. And then he says, and please forgive me now because I'm going to totally massacre a Japanese accent. And he says to me, you should compete Miss Tokyo bodybuilding contest. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I should compete in the Miss Tokyo bodybuilding contest? You're out of your mind. That's impossible. Well, it turns out this big hulk of a guy, is the reigning Mr. Tokyo bodybuilding champ, and he also happens to be a personal trainer to bodybuilding contestants. And we get to talking, and he actually invites me to a Miss Tokyo, it's a drug-free bodybuilding contest. And I'd never seen anything like this. I mean, the women on stage, all Japanese women, svelte, muscular, tan, beautiful, like I was hooked. And Mr. Tokyo says to me, "That's you, 1 year." And I'm looking at them, and I'm looking down at me, and I'm going, that ain't happening, that's impossible. But then he did something very interesting. He broke it into steps. He goes, "I'll tell you how we're going to do it. We're going to work out together for 6 months, 2 hours a day. Then the next 3 months, we're going to add on about 1 hour a day of aerobics. And then the final 3 months, we're going to do posing practice 3 times a week." Okay. And then he offered me a great rate on his personal bodybuilding coaching. So suddenly, by breaking it into steps and by offering me incredible support, what at first sounded so ludicrous, so impossible, began to feel still really tough and still really challenging, but kind of possible, right? So we start working out. I'm loving the first 6 months. I'm getting really strong. After 6 months, I take a look in the mirror, and I look nothing like those gorgeous women on stage. I was kind of like blobby. The best way I can describe it is my body was the shape of SpongeBob SquarePants. It was like big blobs. And I go crying to Mr. Tokyo, and Mr. Tokyo says, "No problem, Moa-san." He says, "All you have to do is lose the 11 kilo of fat covering your muscle." I discovered 11 kilo is 25 pounds, and I had never been on a diet in my life. And that's when he introduced me to cottage cheese vegetables doused with Kikkoman soy sauce. It actually works. So a couple months later, I'm feeling really, really good, a little more svelte. And he sits me down and he says, "Ora-san, you have big problem." All right, what now? And he says, "Ora-san, you too white." Duh, I'm white. And then he explains that under the bright stage lights in bodybuilding competitions, you can't see, the judges can't see muscular definition unless you're really dark, really tan. Now, I have never been tan in my life. I have been burnt many times, but I have never, ever been tan. And that was it. Like, you will never see me tan, so sorry, I'm out of here. And that's when he introduced me to brown body polish. So we keep going. And 1 month of competition, I'm actually pretty jazzed up because I've spied on my fellow contestants, and I'm saying like, I got something here. Remember, this is low-level, drug-free contest, but I was kind of looking pretty good. I'm really jazzed up. 1 month before contest, he sits me down, and he's looking really worried. Mr. Tokyo says, "Ora-san, you have big problem." Okay. He says, "Ora-san, Japanese don't like gaijin." Gaijin is the Japanese word for foreigner, outsider, alien. I said, "Mr. Tokyo, you like me, right?" And he says, "No, Ora-san, Japanese won't let gaijin win, Miss Tokyo." Wait a second. I've been busting my butt for 11 months, and now you tell me I can't even win the stupid contest? The whole contest is literally impossible. I went home that night. I sobbed. I cried into my cottage cheese. I made cottage cheese soup. I scarfed down a couple candy bars that I hadn't had in about a year. And then, of course, I started reasoning to myself, why quit now kind of thing. But I also reasoned any judge, however nationalistic, would allow me to at least get third place, right, if I were somewhat deserving. That's how I rationalized it. So come contest day, I'm pumped. I'm wearing hot pink posing suit. 39 Japanese women and I take our places on stage. There's 2 rounds of compulsory, 1 round of freestyle, 1 round of personal routine. And I'm loving it. It's a wild audience. The guys in the audience, they do this thing. They yell, "Sexy, sex," but in a Japanese accent, it comes out as sexy, sexy. And I say, I like that. We need to own that word. Sexy, love it. A lot of fun. Come judgment time, right? So we all take our places in the final pose on the stage. In first place, Tanaka-san, and the audience roars, and they bring out this huge trophy. I mean, I've never seen a trophy this big. Japanese love their trophies. In second place, Hashimoto-san, and everyone cheers, and they bring out another huge, huge trophy. And then, in third place, Hasegawa-san. And then I hear, and in fourth place, Ora-san! And out comes this huge trophy, and the guys are yelling, Sakshi, Sakshi. What I didn't know is Japanese love their trophies so much that they don't only give to the top 3, they give trophies to the top 6. I love, love, love that trophy, but what it really meant to me was, if you break it down into steps, if you seek support, and if you sweat a lot, the impossible does begin to feel and become very possible. We all want so many things from life, big things and small things. Step number 1 in our strategy for success is to get clear about what we want through all the noise around us. You may want some very, very big things that feel impossible today. Maybe you want a different job. Maybe you want a career change. Maybe you even want to start your own venture. You may also want some smaller things that feel tough. They feel challenging. Smaller things could be learning a new skill. Could be taking on a responsibility at work. It could be starting a new hobby. It could be even getting to the gym finally, right? So I'm going to ask you just for tonight to focus on one thing that you want to set your heart and soul on, big or small, that feels some degree of tough and challenging. I'm going to ask you to take these cards and just write number 1, I want what? Fill in the blank. I want blank. Just take a minute to do that. If you're comfortable, I'd love to hear some of these. Anyone care to share? I have a mic we can pass around. All you need is the first person, then it starts flowing. Thank you. Just pass it to the next person.
My mother, who is sitting next to me, will probably really appreciate this one, but I would like to be more financially stable and responsible.
More financially stable and responsible. Thank you. Does someone else want it? Go ahead.
I'm actually looking to make a career change.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's on. I thought I pressed something. Can you press that button at the bottom? No, it's doing nothing.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm actually looking to make a career change. I'm currently in the defense world, and I'm interested in food and agricultural policy.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, coming.
I would like to publish a novel, although I'm getting my MBA in finance.
Publish a novel. Anyone else? Yes, coming. You can scream it out loud while I'm coming over.
It's actually in response to that last one. So I have an MBA. I've published a novel, and mine is I want to finish my second novel. So we should talk.
Beautiful. Anyone else? One more? I want? Yes.
I want to learn to speak French at least passably, hopefully before I go to Paris, which is very, very soon. So we'll see.
Start working. Thank you for sharing all that. So the first step is, you can't move forward. And if you were kind of stuck saying like, what do I want? You see why it's such an integral step towards success, really getting clarity about what it is you want. So just when we figure out what we want, this second killjoy voice enters our head, right? Okay, you got it all figured out, but you can't write that novel, right? That I can't do it gets real loud in our head. She can do it. She has what it takes. She wrote a novel. She's really good at it. I'm lousy at it. In 1991, I graduated from Columbia Business School. That was arguably the worst job market in history since the Great Depression. Yes, it was. And I really needed a job to pay my bills. And much to the envy of my classmates, I got an invitation to interview at L'Oreal in the hair care division. Now, I really didn't care about hair care, but I really needed a job. So I did all the right things, and I went and I studied shampoo, and I studied conditioner, and I studied hair dye, and all those things. And I went to Loehmann's. Do you have a Loehmann's here? Yeah, I went to Loehmann's. I got a Tahari suit, greatly reduced. And I show up at that interview, and I totally convinced them and me that I would be the perfect assistant brand manager on shampoo. And I get the job. Here's the problem with BSing. You actually have to go to the job once you get it. And I hated that job from day one. I could care less how many bottles of shampoo sold in the Kmarts all over Michigan. I was lackluster. I was dragging myself around the offices. But one day, I actually got a break because there was a tradition that the person at the bottom of the totem pole, that would be me, would make a presentation in front of senior leadership about the latest promotional offer that we were working on. So I was like, oh, good, yeah, here's my chance. And again, I started doing everything right. I actually liked to present, I discovered. I know that's kind of weird, but I liked it. And I researched my audience. What are their interests, needs, objections, right? And then I structured my presentation. Then I practiced my delivery about 10 times. And I went in front of this panel of senior leaders, and I nail it. And I'm just soaring. And sure enough, someone says to me, your boss wants to see you in the office. So I went into the office, and my boss says to me, you were very confident in that presentation. Yeah, I was. And then he said, that's a problem. I swear, that's a problem. Apparently, in this culture, you were supposed to stand in awe of your elders. You were supposed to be quaking in your boots. They expected deference, and what I delivered was confidence. Bad fit. Really couldn't do that job. 1 week later, I was invited into the Office of HR, Human Resources, where I was fired. And then I was very ceremoniously escorted to the curb of Fifth Avenue. First, the guard came with me so I can get my purse at my desk, but then they escorted me to the curb. This is apparently so I wouldn't steal trade secrets about shampoo. Now, shampoo was the last thing on my mind at that moment. Actually, I was having some really weird thoughts at that moment. I wasn't thinking of the bills I had to pay. I was thinking, what's the protocol for when you get fired in the middle of the day? Do you go out for lunch? Do you get a manicure? Like, what do I do now? And then I have this epiphany suddenly as I'm having these strange thoughts. And I said, wait a second. I know what I can do. I think I know what one of my greatest strengths is. It's what got me hired. It's what got me hired at L'Oreal, and it's what got me fired at L'Oreal. I think I'm really good at communicating with confidence and clarity. And then I see it at the corner. What I see is a phone booth, and I take my quarter from my purse. Yes, this is how we did it then. I take my quarter, and I call the Professional Development Center, Columbia Business School, where I went to school. And I'm very excited. I'm talking very quickly, but this is kind of how it sounded. It was, "Hi, Lynn, it's me, Ora. Remember, I used to hang out in your center all the time when I was a student there? Well, I just made a really good presentation, and I got fired, and I want to do more of that." No, not the got fired part. I want to coach. I want to train others. I want to help people lead with confidence and communicate with clarity. Basically, I want to do what you do. How do I do that? And Lynn says to me, "Why don't you come up? We'll talk." It was like I had entered that phone booth, Clark Kent, and I had left Superwoman. And I flew up on the subway to Columbia Business School. 3 hours after I was fired from L'Oreal, I was hired by Columbia Business School. I spent 4 years there. Lynn was my first incredible mentor. And that was truly the first step toward my calling today as an executive coach. When you have this voice in your head, the "I can't do it" voice, the best antidote is to focus and meditate on what makes me unique. Now, something funny about women, though. When I ask women, "What's your greatest strength?" And this is different. I coach both men and women, so I know this. When I ask women, "What's your greatest strength?" they get all weirded out and start stammering. I'm not going to talk about why. I'm just going to tell you that's how it is. We have a lot of trouble articulating what makes us unique, how we're outstanding, how we stand out. Step number 2 in our strategy for success is know what makes you unique. Now, I help my clients out a lot because I have 6 months to 1 year with them, and I do these intensive 360-degree assessments where I get to interview everyone in their realm for about an hour and finally figure out what makes them unique. We don't have the luxury there tonight, so I'm going to make it real easy for you. Anyone have trouble with this? Let me just check in with you first. Anyone have a little trouble articulating all the things that make you stand out? Yeah, okay. I'm going to give you 3 prompts to help you. Prompt number 1. What have you always received positive feedback about historically? Like if you went through all those old performance reviews in your files, what's the common denominator? Prompt number 2. What do people always come to you for, particularly to you, for help or assistance? What do they seek you out for? And prompt number 3 is when people introduce you, friends, colleagues, when they introduce you, what adjectives do they use to describe you? Those are 3 really, really helpful prompts to figuring out what makes you unique. So I'd like to help someone here. I'd like a volunteer, someone who really loves what she does but is having a little bit of trouble articulating what makes her unique. Anyone want to work with me for a couple minutes?
What if you know what makes you unique, but you're not sure you love what you do?
Different exercise. Right now, I'd like to help someone articulate. Okay, let me get this mic here. Okay. So first, tell us your name.
My name's Katie Lewis.
And tell us a little bit about what you do.
I'm a project manager for an IT consulting company. We mostly have government clients. The company itself has a lot of clients that are commercial based, but my business unit focuses on government.
Okay, so project management in IT consulting.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I'm guessing there are a lot of other project managers in IT consulting, right?
Yeah.
So first, let's get out of the way. I want everyone to really hang on to the idea that you could be really good at what you do, but that's not necessarily what makes you unique, right? I'm assuming that to be a good project manager in your field, you need some fundamental basic skills, right? What do you need to do your job well?
You need to be organized. You need to be good with people. You just have to make sure that you're clearly articulating what you want your team to do. Even if it's a week or a month or 6 months, whatever that is, you need to be able to clearly articulate that.
Okay, so to be a good project manager in the IT consulting world, a lot of things you have to do. You have to be super organized. Yeah, you have to deal with people well. You have to communicate directions well. You have to set deadlines. Probably have to follow up on them a little bit too. Yeah?
Correct.
And how are you at those things?
I think I'm good, but you know.
You think you're good?
I am good.
If we looked at your performance reviews, what would they say about those basic fundamental skills?
All of those are reflected well.
Yeah, I had a feeling. Had a feeling it wasn't I think, right? Okay, so I'm assuming that if you were, let go tomorrow, they would bring in another project manager who would have to be good at all those things, managing projects and budgets, leading people, being organized.
Correct.
Okay. So first I'm getting that out of the way because I don't want to confuse with what makes her absolutely unique and different than anyone else who could do her job equally well, right? So now let's start getting into that. Do you have any kind of light bulbs about what makes you stand out?
I mean, a lot of my team members are sometimes challenging to work with, and so I really have to bend over backwards, but also kind of swallow my tongue and make sure that I'm getting them to talk to each other. That's one thing that I would say is probably better.
So let's play with that for a second. You feel that you're really good with working with challenging people. Yeah? Yes. Okay. You had an affirmative there. What is it you do well with those challenging people? What are some of the things that you do to deal with them?
Trying different techniques, I guess. And if I find that one way is they're just not receptive to it, then I basically try a different approach and try and approach them in a different mannerism, or asking them questions instead of saying that they need to do X or Y or Z, which is effective for some people.
Right. So you're a very astute observer of people. Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah?
Yes.
Don't just say yes because I'm standing here and asking you, but are you?
Yes.
You are.
I'm not just saying that because you're standing here.
Yeah. Yeah, you're an astute observer and you seem to analyze your audience really well. And as a result, you seem to flex your behavior to meet different people's needs. Yeah? Yeah. Have you ever gotten feedback about that in any way?
It's mostly just about the teams that I'm in charge of and just how uniform the feedback is around them enjoying that part.
Kind of personal question, but do you have challenging people in your personal life that you've had to manage or deal with?
Yes.
And how are you there?
I mean, I think
if
I'm good
I
at
ask
it.
the other people who have to deal with the same people, challenging people in your life, maybe it's relatives, yeah? Mm-hmm. What would they say about how you handle the challenging people in your life?
Probably just that, sometimes they have to leave and I'm able to stay and get them to think about it.
Funny how what makes us unique is not only what makes us unique. This is like this constant personal brand attribute that follows us everywhere in life. That's actually another cue that you know that this is truly what makes you unique. Are you exhibiting this skill, this behavior, this mannerism everywhere, right? Anywhere else you're thinking about how you deal with challenging people or maybe challenging situations? Anything else come to mind?
No, I mean, I think it's mostly focused in work and personal. I mean, yeah, that's...
Right. So would you say that one, I'm not asking you to say that this is your absolute greatest, but one of your unique brand attributes is that ability to deal with challenging people by reading the situation and flexing your behavior?
Now that you're saying it, I am saying it.
So that's one of the things. If we kept on talking, I think we'd probably discover a lot of other things, yeah? All right, so step number 2, under number 1, I want what, where you got real clear about what you wanted, right? Number 2, one of the things that makes me unique is, and fill in the blank. I'm not going to ask you to commit to the greatest one tonight because I know we'll never get out of here, but I will ask you just to write one of them. I'd love to hear some of them. Share, yes, thank you.
What makes me unique is I can talk to anyone, and if I get the middle seat on the plane, that. And I've had some very good serendipitous things happen as a result of that.
Beautiful. I can talk to anyone. Yes.
One thing that makes me unique is my ability to build relationships and to connect people with each other.
I can build relationships and connect other people. Nice. Beautiful. Thank you. Yes.
One thing that makes me unique is that I'm able to remain calm in very tense situations.
I can remain calm in the storm. Beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, thank you.
What makes me unique is I can digest a lot of complex information very quickly, and if I need to, without a lens of emotion.
Beautiful. I can digest a lot of information quickly and unemotionally. That's right. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, so you're getting real clear about what you want. You know what makes you unique. Are we there? This other killjoy negative voice jumps in right there. It's either the, but wait, I don't deserve this, or a more popular version of that negative voice is, all right, I know I deserve it, but I can't say I deserve this. By now, you've all read the research. You know that women don't ask as well as the men ask. Yes? Comes to men and women. We women often wait for the man to ask us to marry them, right? Did he ask you? Did he ask you? Right? When's our turn? We don't ask as frequently for things like help, for promotions, for salary increases. This is not a surprise to you. We're just not as good at it. Now, I had the absolute honor, the privilege of working with a very powerful, influential female executive at a Fortune 100 company. Her name was Nora. She was the head of global operations for this company, and she did her job so well. She transformed an entire division that they asked her to take over an even larger chunk of the company, and they were giving her a title and a promotion along with it. And this came toward the end of a 6-month coaching engagement with her, and I was really excited for her. The announcement was about to come out, and I'm leaving her office one day, and I have my coat on, I have my bag over my shoulder, and I said, "Oh, Nora, I forgot to ask you. Were you pleased with the compensation package?" And she looks at me, her face falls. "I haven't had the conversation yet." What? I didn't say that. Few things shocked me at this point in my career, but this one really, really shocked me. The announcement is, virtually tomorrow, and you haven't had the conversation about your compensation package yet? Like, wait. And she admitted she was deathly afraid of this conversation. This is a woman who made mountains move for a company. Took off the bag, took off the coat, went back into the office. We came up with the assertive language she needed to get what she felt was fair, what she deserved. We role-played. She did go in to have the conversation the next day at her company. Lo and behold, she really did get exactly what she wanted. She thanked me endlessly. 1 week later, we're closing our coaching engagement. So I think, and Nora says to me, I know our coaching engagement is over, but I'd like to re-engage you so you can support me during the transition to this larger role. Great, I would love that. My rates had actually gone up since we first engaged 6 months ago, but I'll tell you what, I'll just invoice you at the old rate. And she looks at me, actually with kind of like an amused look on her face at this point, and she says, "Why would you do that?" Why would I do that? Because I'm a total idiot? I know I deserve it, I just couldn't say I deserved it. So I want to ask you, has anyone here ever said or thought, "I'm really good at what I do, I'm just really bad at selling myself. I'm really good at what I do, I'm just bad at marketing"? Yes? I can't tell you how many times I hear this. If I got $1 each time, me and Sheryl, right? We need to reframe the word self-promotion because women seem to think self-promotion is a dirty word. Step number 3 in our strategy for success is authentically communicate your value. In order to counter this last terrible negative voice in our head, this voice that says, I can't say I deserve it, we need to reframe selling ourselves. We need to reframe self-promotion as the opportunity to do more good work for more people. Wouldn't you love to do more of what you do for more people? Yes. That's what authentically communicate your value is about. I want to be real clear about what I mean by value right now. I don't mean your price tag. I don't mean your compensation. Value is something that is relevant to your audience. What do you contribute? How are you helpful? How are you generous? What impact do you have on the people around you? What impact do you have on the bottom line? That's the value to your audience. So being unique in one way or another is good. But unless it's relevant, has value to your audience in some way, it really isn't going to get you anywhere, right? So step number 3 is authentically communicate your value. Remember my moment, my Clark Kent Superwoman moment in the phone booth? That was actually my first authentic sales pitch because it really came from the heart. It was really so genuine. I did talk about what makes me unique. I had clarity at that moment, and I talked about how I wanted to use that to help others, which Lynn on the other line was like, yes, we need you. We have a lot of work here. So that was a successful sales pitch. I was authentically communicating my value. So right now, under 1, number 2, number 3, just write down, I will authentically communicate my value. And let's talk about how to make that come alive. We have opportunities all day long to authentically communicate our value. We just miss them. We have opportunities in the elevator, in the hallway, over the proverbial water cooler, at the coffee machine, and we miss them. What do we do in the elevator? What do we talk about when we're going? I'm not talking about the elevator at home, but the elevator at work. You know, going up and down, up and down. What do we end up talking about with these very important people around us? The weather. The snowstorm. That snowstorm is coming. Did you hear the snowstorm? We're closing early. Oh my God, the snowstorm. Right? Right? Or, oh, spring has come. Isn't it nice? Yes, I just came in from the outside. I know that too. Right? The friggin' weather. We know it already. Right? Why waste time on the weather? It's really helpful at home in the apartment building. Use weather all you want. You have no idea how many times I talk about weather in my apartment building. But not at work. You're riding the elevator with important people. You're in the coffee at the coffee machine with very important people. They say, hey, how you doing? What do you say? Great. I just finished the XYZ project. This is the kind of work I love because I get to do A, B, and C. How you doing? Right? In those moments, you have an opportunity to get something in there. You're showing your passion for something, right? And when you have passion for something, you're really good at it, right? And you're planting seeds as you go around. So when that person needs that good thing that you do so well and are so passionate about, who are they going to go to? If they've heard you say it so many times, they're going to come seeking you. Unless you authentically communicate your value, no one knows where to find you, right? So let's try this out. Anyone want to do a little elevator ride and authentically communicate your value to someone, or at least practice it, try it out? Anyone want to work with me? I'll be easy on you. Okay, don't all jump at once. Okay. All right. Where's that? Thank you. Okay, and your?
My name's Kate Key.
Kate Key?
Yes.
Hi, Kate Key. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
I work in a technology company as a product marketing manager.
Technology company product marketing manager.
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean? What do you do every day?
I work on a whole bunch of different things like building videos and demos, creating marketing plans, looking for advertising opportunities for the product, writing positioning statement, coming up with competitive analysis. So a whole bunch of
stuff. Which part of it do you like? If you had your druthers, which piece would you absolutely keep because it's the funnest part of your job?
Coming up with a plan and tactics for that.
Coming up with a plan and tactics. So recently, what opportunity did you have to come up with a plan and tactics for something? Give us an example to make that come alive.
Sure. Till very recently, I was managing a product which is actually an iPhone app. And so it's like an app that helps you find like the best restaurants in your area and bars and nightclubs, but also tells you a little bit about the people who go there. So it's like Yelp meets Facebook meets a whole bunch of different things. So I came up with a plan for that, just like a quick short-term plan, thinking of, who are the people we're going after, what are the different channels that we can use, what's our basic hook, our positioning, what's the story that we're really telling people.
And today, what are the results of all that work that you did?
Well, it's still not launched yet.
Okay.
And I was facing a lot of heat with the person I was working with. So I chose to get out of that product and in a different team, which was probably very painful for me, but I was losing sleep and not eating and not being happy. So much to my chagrin, I had to move to a different product.
Right. So you're not working on that product anymore?
No.
Yeah. Was there interest as a result of your work on it?
Yes. What happened, interestingly, is when I decided to leave the team, everybody said, oh, we need to pay attention to the product. Till very recently, there wasn't any attention. It was like a stepchild of the company.
Yeah.
And now everybody's on it. So I feel it's like a bittersweet feeling, really. Because I'm like, oh, I'm off it when I really needed the attention. And now that, I'm off it.
You were part of the initiation of this thing that's absolutely taking off, and that excites you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And do you have an opportunity now to do similar works in devising plans and tactics?
A little bit, not so much.
Not
because
so
I was
much.
Completely owning that product. Now I'm part of a team that has a bigger product and a few players within it.
Yeah.
So yes.
But I'm hearing you'd like to.
I would love to.
You'd like to.
Yes.
Who needs to know that you'd like to do more of that work at work?
The executive VP.
An executive VP.
Yeah. And he's got my ear, thankfully. So
he already has your ear. Okay, so good. How are you authentically communicating what you contribute with this guy who's already, or woman, I don't know, who's already got your ear?
Well, I try to meet with him frequently.
Okay.
Tell him what I'm enjoying, what I'm not.
Okay.
And the challenges that I face.
Yeah.
And I've developed a relationship with him over the past year and a half, which has actually helped me a lot. So when I was looking to move to another team, he gave me options. Okay. So that really helped. And so I could pick and choose where I wanted to go next.
So do you think that he adequately hears
yes.
your value?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to choose someone else because you're doing a terrific job with him. I want you to choose someone else that maybe doesn't know but might be a great connection at the company for the future. Someone you don't know quite that well, you don't have the ear of yet, and you're riding in an elevator. Yeah, a little uncomfortable, right? Hi, how you doing? Do you have someone in mind?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
What would you say to that person if you bumped into that person in the elevator?
I'd start talking about his product, which is doing really well.
Right.
And then just mention what I'm currently working on, because I think, the conversation will flow very like, so what are you working on right now? Okay. And I'll talk about the product that I'm working on right now and how exciting it is and how many things we can do with it.
Yeah.
So he sees that, and also communicate to him that I've moved in different teams and worked with different people. This is what I've produced. Probably.
Come on up here. Let's assume you already did that brilliant stuff that she mentioned she was going to do. Ask him about his project and his work. And then I turn to Kate and say, and how about you? What are you working on?
So I'm working on this product, which is really cool. It's a mobile commerce product. And what it does, it helps companies come up with an app and also the back end for the app. So you know who are your customers, what you're selling to them, come up with campaigns and a whole bunch of different things. I recently got onto this project, and I'm really excited about it because I'll get to build all of the assets that's required for it. So may it be like, advertising opportunities to communicate the product, may it be videos and demos that really tell us. So build a brand, really. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Terrific. We need to give her a hand for that. Thank you. Not that complicated, is it? It just means that you take those opportunities to communicate what you're excited about, what you do well, what you want to do more of, right? You know what you want. You know what makes you shine. Now spread the word a little bit. Do it authentically. When you quiet up, shush up some of those real negative voices in your head, you have an opportunity to not only change your own life, you actually have an opportunity to change the world. Yes, the world. I witnessed this as an executive coach, and I also witnessed this as a mother. So I'm going to circle back to the story I started with about my 16-year-old daughter and her friend Lizzie, who are celebrity hunting to help them raise $10,000 for a school in Uganda. So one night I hear that Nicholas Kristof, the New York Times op-ed columnist, and the actress Olivia Wilde are going to be at this big hall on the east side, the 92nd Street Y, talking about the Half the Sky documentary. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of heads nod for those who don't know. Nicholas Kristof is the op-ed columnist. The Half the Sky book documentary movement is about creating opportunities for women around the world. Olivia Wilde is that gorgeous actress from House. She was in the movie Tron. She's the face of Revlon, a beautiful face of Revlon ads now. I think there's a new movie with Jim Carrey. She's engaged to some guy from Saturday Night Live, and she's a social activist. So I hear that they're going to be at the Y, and I think, oh my gosh, Carmel and Liz are going to love this. I'm going to invite them. And sure enough, they're so excited. Celebrity, yes, let's go. They get all fancied up. But they tell me first, we're going to go early because they have a plan that they're going to park themselves by the stage door. I don't know what's going to happen. After that, they're going to stalk Olivia, jump on Olivia, tie her up, and carry them her to their high school. I don't know what the plan is, but something about they're going to get Olivia Wilde, right? So I go along with this. I do have some thoughts up here, I admit, but I'm go along with this. Sure, whatever you want, let's go early. So we go, and it's apparent immediately that this is truly impossible. I mean, really, really, really impossible because there are security guards everywhere, and they're getting nowhere near a stage door. But Carmel and Lizzie have a plan B. In the Q&A, in this hall of 900 people, they stand up. They wave their hands frantically first, so they're called upon. They stand up, and with great poise, they say, Mr. Kristof, we are the co-presidents of Girls Learn International Club at our high school, LaGuardia High School. And we're raising money for a partner school in Uganda. And you have taught us the power of using celebrity faces to raise awareness for causes. Can you help us? And he's a little flummoxed by these super girls there. He starts stuttering. And then, at that moment, Olivia Wilde jumps up from her seat on stage and says, I'll help you. There's this whoa that goes up in the audience. Whoa. So fast forward, hundreds of hours of work that these two girls put into planning this event. Olivia Wilde did show up at their high school. That night they raised thousands of dollars for the school. This is a fact that was blogged about in the MTV blog and also in the Half the Sky. If you look at the Half the Sky blog way back, you'll see that was blogged about. And that school in Uganda is soon to have its first bathroom with plumbing for girls. Tell your pets. So I say, if two 16-year-old girls can do it, there is no reason that any one of us in this room can't do it. We know what we want. Each one of us is unique. It's time to quiet those voices and to share our value with the world. Thank you.
I'd like to ask
other panelists to come up. I've just received a note from Wendy Parker, who is the National Security Advisor to Nancy Pelosi. And as you may guess, with events that have happened this week, she has been asked by Leader Pelosi to stay on tonight. So she sends her regrets and assures us that she wouldn't have canceled unless it was really, really important. And I think we all know how many important things are going on right now up there. So Suzanne and Kristen are eminently capable of handling this themselves. So I'd like to ask, let me ask Suzanne to start and just reflect on what Ora has said and what qualities you have used to get ahead in the places that you have worked. It would help, Suzanne, also just to list, because this is an unbelievable list, the places where you have worked. They show such diversity and they're just really impressive. But I'd like people to know the background that you come to this with.
Sure, great. Thank you. I graduated from Duke in 1983, and the majority of my classmates, except for my roommate and myself, had their jobs with Procter & Gamble and J.P. Morgan and all the training programs. I did not. And my father said to me, "What are you going to do when the party's over? You know, you've had great internships and fun at college here." And I knew I wanted to go and work in politics. So I got myself a job on a Viva Reagan conference in Miami. I was the only non-Hispanic person Hispanic American person working on it. I do speak Spanish, so that did help. And from that, I got a job at the Republican National Committee, which was fantastic. Wonderful, wonderful experience learning about politics, and did that for a number of years and ended up becoming the chief of staff to the co-chairman of the Republican Party, which was unique in and of itself in that the co-chairman was the president's daughter. So in addition to having that job, I got to run around the world and go to all these places that I would never have had the opportunity, working with the UN and a number of other multinational organizations, multilateral organizations, and just had a really fantastic experience, but became very involved in women's issues because that was her big cause. And went to the World Women's Conference in 1985, which was the end of the decade of the woman, and it really, really opened my eyes as to what still needed to be done, in the world. The big topic of conversation at that conference was female circumcision, which is still a big topic of conversation in the world today, really sad to say. But what was really striking to me at that conference was how many countries sent men as the head of their delegation. At least the United States sent Maureen Reagan and Jean Kirkpatrick and Lindy Boggs and a really phenomenal group of women, but I would say at least 40%, maybe 50% of the countries there had men. Leading the delegation, some had all men. So anyway, went on from that, went to law school, worked for Barbara Bush as her special assistant, worked on 3 presidential campaigns, ran the inaugural representation of the Bushes when he became president, and went to law school, went to the Middle East and was Queen Noor's chief of staff, lived there for a number of years, and have practiced law with one New York law firm and one California law firm. Went to work as Jim Wolfenson's counselor at the World Bank, ran their anti-corruption division, went to work with the bailout for AIG as their chief compliance officer. And just because I was bored, I went to work for another company in trouble, Academy, which is the company formerly known as Blackwater. My mother said, "Why?" And I said, "Because our company has chosen to outsource, our country has chosen to outsource the training of many of our special forces and national security, so let's make sure these companies are all run right." And I have to tell you, the people that I work with are phenomenal. And in 2 years, we've turned the company around, won the National Law Journal Award for Law and Compliance, which we get in 2 weeks, got the highest ratings from every single one of our regulators, and I truly work with heroes. And I'll just give you an example. When I go to the main facility in North Carolina, the guy to my right ran SEAL Team 6. He's retired, obviously. We ran SEAL Team 6, and that identified Osama bin Laden and went in. The guy to my left, retired Army, led the unit that found Saddam Hussein. And the guy across the hallway from me is the guy who carried Jessica Lynch, who's the SEAL who carried Jessica Lynch, who was on the front of Time magazine. So we had a regulator come recently, and he said, "And who are you?" And I said, "Well, obviously I'm surrounded by heroes. I'm just the lawyer." But I do feel in a very small way, and I'm sorry to go on so long, I do feel in a small way that the legal and compliance team that we've brought into this company has helped to put the rules in place so that they can do the job that they need to do, for our country. So we've contributed in a tiny way. So with respect to what Ora has talked about today, I think that as you go through your career, and I've certainly had some wonderful mentors, and I've also had some places that have been extremely challenging to work. Interestingly enough, not the one that I'm at right now, which one would assume 99.8% male and all former special forces, which I don't fit into that mold. They've been actually some of the most welcoming people. I thought it was interesting, your test of 3. Be clear about what you want. I think I've always been pretty clear about what I've wanted. Know what makes me unique. I think I've been pretty clear about that too, and I think it's integrity and having the courage to stand up for what I believe is right, no matter what the consequences are. And I think a lot of people have difficulty with that. People are afraid. Because sometimes the consequences can be damning, even if you've done the right thing. Because we live in a very complex world, and we live in a world where, for whatever reason, sometimes people are not, even though you may be doing the right thing and you are doing the right thing, they were never in favor of the right thing, if that makes sense. So I think that that makes me unique, but it's also come with challenges. And authentically communicate your value. I think that's the most difficult here. How do you communicate your value, especially when there are people, and as you go further up the ladder, I think, in your career, there are people along the way who want to tear you down for whatever reason. They want the job. You don't fit their model. You're a woman. One job, you're an American. Another job, you're a Republican. So there are people that want to tear you down. So how do you authentically communicate your value? I think that's the one that I continue to struggle with. So it was interesting to hear your comments here today. So at least I've crossed sort of 2 off the list. But I think even at the point in my career, and there's a lot of young people in this room, I don't know that if somebody's accomplished all 3, I would think there would be very few people that have probably accomplished, all 3 and are able to maintain that, in whatever job they are. So that's the one I'll be thinking about a lot more post here. That's great. So anyway, Kristen.
Suzanne, can you give a similar background and your reflections? And then I'd like to ask you both to talk about mentors in your lives.
Wow, so I have a tough challenge to follow these 2. So I actually am a professor at Duke now. I'm an MPP 96 grad, and before taking the academic route, I was a journalist. And so when Kim asked me to speak, she said, it's going to be on women's leadership. I said, I've always been a follower and observer. I've never been a leader, so I'm not sure I'm really qualified to talk about this, not to be playing into what I think were some very valuable points about how women tend to think, but that was my first thought. What can I offer here? So I'm going to do also what a good journalist and good academic do, which is slightly dodge that head-on challenge and just go directly to reflecting on what you said. So I'm a political scientist. I study American political behavior and collective action, and I also have just written a book about women's organizations, so I study gender and politics as well. And I am here to tell you that there is a whole realm of political science research that will completely back up everything you're saying. And, in some ways, maybe this is just hubris on my part, but I actually think the problem in the political sphere, my company here notwithstanding, may actually have the biggest repercussions for us as a society. So we think it was a big year for women getting elected to Congress. I just spent the day on Capitol Hill. There are 20 women in the Senate, and that's, an all-time record. It's 20%. I was watching some votes today, and the people sitting next to me were women, and at one point a vote went down, and the woman turned to me. I'm a total stranger. She has no idea what my beliefs are. And she says, we need more women up here. And, there's some really fascinating research that's been done by some political scientists, Jennifer Lawless, who's here at AU, and Rick Fox, that looks at the question of why do we have so few women in, a country that has so many capable women, that is as advanced as we are, where women are as educated as we are. And, they looked at a lot of the common explanations that you hear is work-family problems, or women aren't in the right networks, they're not getting recruited, and these are all factors, right? But the biggest factor, one of the bigger factors that was sort of surprising that they found is that women lack ambition, or more to the point, they don't think they're qualified. And the interesting thing about the study is the people they were interviewing, they controlled for qualifications. So they interviewed, X hundred men who had all graduated from law school and, or had successful businesses or all these other things that are pipelines for political careers. And they interviewed 400 women who were demographically matched in terms of actual accomplishments. So the men and women were equally accomplished. But the men would say, oh, yeah, I could be a senator. I'd be so good at that. And the women were like, I don't think I have the qualifications. And so their argument is that, I heard so much of it in your talk, this has really important consequences, not only for those individual women, but for our democracy, if we actually do believe that women have something distinctive to share. And I think in a lot of cases we do. And I think there's a lot of research on that. So one of the uncomfortable questions that I think arises from this research, and I've got a colleague who's working on this, and it goes to your L'Oreal experience, which is that, maybe it's not that women undervalue themselves. Maybe it's that they're accurately reading signals. So maybe it is that when women go into a meeting and they confidently present something, they end up getting fired. You gave an example of that, or sort of the equivalent of that. It's not heard, it's tamped down, and so forth. And which leads me, and then I'll sort of stop here, but it leads me to really think about groups like this one, and what it is, whether individual women, aside from needing coaching, which I think we do, also need women's organizations. We need women's networks. We need groups of women sort of supporting our individual ambitions. My book on women's organizations, which was just came out, really shows kind of the fraying and the decline in sort of political potency and membership and vibrancy of women's organizations. And those historically were places where women went to get confidence and leadership skills and networks and that kind of thing. And, I teach undergraduates and graduate students now, so I'm teaching students who are 19, 20, maybe up to 30. And I think there's a real sense that, women don't need women's organizations. They don't need other women. Why would I organize with other women? I can do it all on my own. And, your daughter's example is awesome. That's great. Is that a model that all women out there can successfully pursue, on their own? A lot of young people believe that, and I think that's great. I think that idealism and optimism should be encouraged. Is it always realistic? I'm not sure. And, so I think, my hat is off to Kim for organizing this, such a vibrant organization of women, and for, kind of reminding us that, I think there still is great value in collective action, not just individual self-confidence and so forth. So.
Well, I'll be paying you later for that. Suzanne, can you talk a bit about mentors in your life? How you have found them, whether you are one, what role has that played?
It's interesting. One of my best mentors is a more recent mentor in the past, I would say 6 years, and she was found in the carpool line. And she wasn't found in the carpool line by me, but by my best friend and former roommate here. And I say the carpool line. I mean, they knew each other from the school where their children went. And I was in a job, and a very challenging job, running the anti-corruption division at the World Bank. And it's interesting. People talk about ridding the world of corruption and want to take the hard road, but when you do take the hard road, and when I'm given a task, I go after that, and that sometimes people really didn't want you to take that hard road and didn't really want you to go. Everybody wants to talk against corruption, but when you really actually go after it and you point out the people that are involved and you document everything down to the wire transfers and you have photographs of the hospitals that were never built, it scares people. It scares people when you disrupt the system that's been in place for years. Perhaps it wouldn't have disrupted people as much if it had been men doing it, but when you had a group of women doing it. So I was going through a very challenging time because when they can't attack the substance of your work, they come after you personally. And then they go after your family and they go after your children at their schools, which kind of sounds like a John Grisham novel, but I can tell you, having lived through it, it happens. So anyway, a very wonderful, powerful female lawyer was in the carpool line with my friend and said, I've read about your friend, and that's the type of lawyer that I need, and I'm going to recruit her. But I was in my save the world phase, and I still thought I could save the world, and I do think that we made a difference. But anyway, we went to lunch, and we started a dialogue, and that woman, her name is Stacia Kelly, for anybody that knows her, and she's become a phenomenal mentor of mine. She became the general counsel of AIG to help them with their problems. She recruited me there to be the deputy general counsel and compliance officer. And she's a mentor that I wish I had back when I was in my 20s. She's the type of woman every woman should have as a mentor. And I hope, I've had some male mentors, but I've never had a mentor as good as Stacia Kelly. And I hope that I am that mentor to the women along the way, because I've worked really, really hard in a lot of jobs where I haven't had that type of mentor. The one other mentor that I've had for a very, very long time is Mrs. Bush, Barbara Bush. And she has been a phenomenal mentor to me, a different type of mentor, but a phenomenal mentor to all the women that have worked for her over the years. And for those that think that she was not a powerful person as just the wife of, she was an extremely and still is powerful person, but she went out of her way to help and to keep in touch with all the women that have worked for her. The one piece of advice that I would have is that you want to help other women. I mean, we need those networks. I think even more now than ever after the financial crisis of 2008. And you don't help those women because you expect anything back. You help them, you're paying back, you're helping them. But I've even had situations where I've had women now that have gone with me. I've had one woman that's been in my last 4 jobs. I've had multiple women that have been in at least 2 jobs with me. And it's phenomenal when you help them. There have been situations where they've come back and helped me, not just professionally, but personally. So I think networks, whether it's your own little network that you formed or even a bigger one, are extremely, extremely important.
Kristen?
So when I think of mentor, I think of graduate school, my PhD program, which I went through in the mid to late 90s into the early 2000s and on. And at that time, there were very few women in my department, and they were the ones who could serve as mentors were older women. So these were women who had come of professional age probably before sort of on the later end, sort of the earlier end of the women's movement, but had really saw themselves as having succeeded on their own. We didn't get any help. There was no women's movement. We had to fight our battles. And I would say that group of those women, the vast majority of them had very little interest in, and probably a little bit of an antipathy toward mentoring women. The idea being that it would make women you don't need special favors. Look, I did it. A little bit of jealousy that that they'd make it easier and it would somehow diminish their accomplishments. But there was one woman who was different in that group, and she has been an amazing mentor. And I've had great male mentors as well, who I would say are as good as this particular woman, so I'm not even singling her out particularly. But I think I've often thought there's sort of two types of people in the world. Everybody goes through hardship. So, there's the kind of people who say, I went through this hardship and I'm going to make sure that nobody else has to go through it. Or there are people who say, I got through it, so what's your problem? And, so this particular mentor, who's just a towering intellect and a huge public intellectual, huge, brilliant scholar, but also really trying to sort of make democracy function better and, get professors out of the academy and into the public square. I think everything I ever asked, she just found a way to deliver. And she's studies networking and organization, and she's built organizations, and she makes sure that she brings her mentees in, but without the expectation that we're all going to be little mini me's who have to sort of, which is common in the academy, right? If you're a so-and-so student, you're just going to perpetuate whatever their line of thinking is. And she's always been somebody who's just very open to sort of whatever, we wanted to do. So I think it's really, really important. And I also think it's important, I'll say one last thing. You started with an anecdote, and I'll start with one. When I was a baby teacher, I guess I was in grad school. So this would have been probably 1999 or so. And I was TAing a big American government class, and and it was at a prestigious university, and everybody there was a high achiever, and everybody thought they were brilliant, and most of the people in the class were men, and the guys would sit up front and talk and very have all the right answers. And there was a young woman who was, I think, a sophomore or something, and she would always sit in the back, and she'd kind of slump, and she'd kind of she always had this kind of, looked like a little snarl on her face. And it was a small enough class that I was kind of distracted. And I was a new teacher, so I was sort of uncertain about what I was doing. And she never talked. And she just always she always had this look of, I'm too smart for this. And we gave the midterm. There was a little trick question to it. None of the guys got it. She got it. She nailed it. And I was just stunned. I mean, she was the only one in the class who got it, who did an A paper. And I finally said, I've got to just do something about this because I don't understand what's going on with this woman. And so I just said, can I talk to you? And I said, I'm just really confused. You sit in the back, you never talk, you don't look like you're enjoying the class, but you aced the test. What's going on? Why don't you talk? You obviously have ideas. And she said, oh, and then I think, the tears started. And, I'm so intimidated by the guys. They know everything. And, and I'm just like, oh, my God. Did you not just hear what I said? You're the one who aced the test. They all got B's, And I've used that example in classes, and the women students are always like, yeah. And so I think it's really important just to kind of remember that, even if we still feel like we need mentoring or we aren't really sure, we have all those voices in the head. I mean, we may not be projecting that, and there are younger women who may really be able to benefit from, hearing of our experiences along the lines of what you did, our vulnerabilities, and how we've learned from negative experiences. So,
and obviously that's one of the purposes of the Women's Forum.
Yeah. Can I say one other thing just real quickly? I think it's also really, really important to have and for those of you that are my generation, maybe the younger people, is to have your kitchen cabinet too. It's not just having a mentor, but it's having a group of women. And I've primarily worked in mainly all male places, or at least the people that I've had to interact with on a daily basis are mainly men, but you need to have that kitchen cabinet group of women. And I'm not saying like in your profession, but women that are your friends that you can call. I have a needlepoint pillow that says, your true friends are those that you can call at 4:00 in the morning and they'll answer. And it's having people that you can bounce ideas off of. Christy's one, we have another, she's in education, we have another woman in education, somebody from Wall Street, and somebody in the nonprofit world, but that are going to be there for you no matter what, that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can say, oh my God, this is happening, what would you do? And it doesn't really matter that they're not in the same field, but they're there for you, and they know you well, and they can also take a step back and say, okay, that guy's an asshole, or whatever. Not very nice to say, that you're dealing with, but they can really look at, or they can say, okay, you're being a little bit emotional, about that, take a step back and here's how you should handle it. So I think it's really important, especially for the younger women here, to really make sure that they don't forget to have that group of women that they can call. And you can add to that group as the years go on, from different walks of life. And those women don't necessarily even have to all know each other, but they're your group of advisors that you go to.
Ora, can I ask you to come back up, and we're going to start the Q&A. If anyone has questions for any of our three panelists, please come to the microphones. I'll get the microphone over there and put it up. But I think you know how to do this. Yeah.
So I guess my first kind of question is, Kristen, it was really interesting for me to hear from you about women being intimidated in the classroom, because I personally had kind of the opposite experience as a freshman in college, where I often spoke up in classes and got really kind of bullied by male classmates, who then came back to me and were like, "Oh, like stuck up," like, and so you know, called me a bitch and stuff like that. And so I guess my particular question is, how do you handle really negative feedback from both male and female colleagues who are not comfortable with you being assertive and a confident woman in a public place?
It's a good question for all of our panelists.
This sounds very much like a Sheryl Sandberg anecdote, doesn't it? The bossy anecdote she's been sharing. One thing that I find that is very helpful is if you can turn it around and make the person reflect on their judgment, right? So we're in these situations where very assertive behavior is being called bitchy or bossy or aggressive, but only for women, and exactly the same behavior is being called ambitious and forward-thinking and confident for men. So rather than, attack someone, say, let's take another example in the room, right? A male example, right? How would you describe that behavior, right? So just getting people to reflect on what they're observing and how they're reacting to it. What we're trying to do is not only change our own lives, but increase awareness of men and women in our world. And we need help, and men need help. So I think conversation is very important here.
I agree with you on that. I'd like to give a little anecdote. But the first person I ever hired was a woman I hired as an intern. She was in college. And we worked together. She somehow was able to convince her college to give her multiple credits for being an intern for us at the RNC. And that went on for about a year and a half. She ended up, when she graduated, getting a job at the White House. And by that point, I had gone on to work in the Middle East. And so in the middle of the night, one night, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning in Amman, Jordan, my phone was like ringing. I couldn't, all of a sudden I realized it's the phone. And I get up and I hear this, this is the White House operator calling. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And then I hear our operator, because I worked for their majesties. So we had the royal court operator on, we had the White House operator on, and then we had this woman who had been the intern. And she's sobbing on the phone, sobbing. She had been at this meeting. She's in her early 20s. She was the only woman there. But she had been given the role by her boss at the White House, because he couldn't attend, to be responsible for this one particular aspect of the president's trip. And you had the Secret Service, you had the FBI because of something else going on, and you had all these men. She's the only one. And she stood up and she took a position and she said, this is what's going to happen with the trip. And people were arguing with her, and she said, no, this is the way it's going to be. And as she was leaving the room, she heard one of the guys say, what a bitch. She's only in her 20s. Who does she think she is? Whatever. So she calls me. She's sobbing. So meanwhile, remember, I know that the White House operator is still listening. And I know that the royal court operator is listening. And God knows who else, the Israelis and everybody else, in the process. So, and I'm really tired because we have just been back from a trip. So I'm listening to all this. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. We have a choice to make. And maybe I was a little bit more blunt at that point than perhaps I would be today, or maybe I would still be blunt. And after listening to all this, we talked through the whole thing, and I said, look, the bottom line is you can't change how they view you. You have to decide who you are, and did you handle yourself professionally? Yes. Are you confident in did you take the right position? Did you do what your boss told you? Yes. And I said, well, you have a choice. And in my mind, do you want to be a bitch or do you want to be a bimbo? So they're going to label you one of the two. And so she said, you're right. I don't want to be a bimbo. I said, okay. So at that point, we hang up, and she's like, okay, hangs up. I go to get back in bed, ring, 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 phone rings. And it's White House operator number 3, who I had previously worked at the White House. So she said, I loved your advice. I said, thank you, operator 3, and hung up. So, again, you can't change how other people are going to look at you. And that's a hard lesson for everybody, including myself, because there's been some jobs where I've said, but I did the right thing, and I am a good person, and you just have to know that's who you are and move forward and not let other people label you.
Kristen, what would you add?
So I'm glad you ended with the word label, because in my experience with the younger generation, and I don't know if this will resonate with those of you who are maybe early 20s, I think the lesson that we are diverse and that there shouldn't be any sort of racial, gender, class hierarchies, any discrimination, I think this is great. I support all of this. It's been drilled into this generation in a way it wasn't for me coming of age in the 70s and the 80s. I think the downside of that is that the younger generation is very, very reluctant to self-identify as, a group. So you have, and I haven't seen really good studies on this, but there's suggestive evidence that younger women are really reluctant to sort of say, I am part of this group called women, and we have a shared experience, we have a shared background, we have a shared fate. I'm listening to all these stories, and I'm thinking, we heard these stories in the 70s, and here we are, it's 2013, and, you've got these incredible women to my left here, and all of you in the room, and why is this still going on? And why do we need, you to be saying this on the phone, or you to be coaching these incredibly brilliant, accomplished women to have confidence? I mean, and I think part of it is that, and I don't mean to be despairing here, but I'm a little concerned about the younger generation of women not seeing that, there's still work to be done for gender equality. Just because most of the structural inequalities have been taken out of the law, that's great, but it doesn't mean that there aren't still, or we wouldn't all be here, right? There aren't still lingering collective experiences that are different for men and women and that often disadvantage women. So I don't know that that's an answer to your question, but it's a cause for me for some concern among younger women.
Me too.
Hi. I have a question. Is this on? Yes. Okay. So the longer I've worked, and particularly about your third part about authentically communicating your value, an observation I've been having lately as I get older and I've worked longer is that in your younger years you can communicate that in a certain way with a certain level of eagerness. I can do it. You show up early, you go late. You're just like the energy bunny that can just do lots and always deliver and make people happy. And in your middle years you transition into a type of more expertise on delivery, technical expertise, knowing networks and knowing people. And then when you hit that next level, I'm finding, and I'm interested in your observations about my observations, is what I'm finding is that it becomes less about the technical delivery. I mean, that's still important, but it almost becomes more about the relationship management and then also the loyalty management, that the higher you go up, the more it becomes important about displaying loyalty and about being very attuned to particular individuals who are the people who are going to be important in your ascent. So, and then in order to effectively communicate that value, you have to know your audience so much better and so much more. So it becomes less about technical expertise and more about kind of personal relationship management and knowing how to communicate that. And I was particularly interested in your, when you give your example about the VP of a Global 100 company, how she must have faced many, many challenges. And I'm sure each one of you have faced many, many challenges in that kind of ascent about different ways to effectively communicate value.
Yeah. My response to that is yes, yes, and yes. You're absolutely right. When you're going up a traditional career ladder, a lot of what you're judged on in the early years is that expertise. And then at a certain point, you're very much judged on your management downward, right? And then you get to the certain point and like, yay, you're promoted. Well, all that's a given. The fact that you have expertise, you have knowledge, you know how to manage teams toward results, we're not going to talk about that anymore. Now, the vision has to go in a whole different areas. How do you manage upward, right? And it's a very I do a lot of coaching around this area because people are kind of shocked when they get to a certain level and they realize that they're being evaluated and judged on something very, very different, right? So suddenly you got to take your eyes off looking down and you have to look up. And those relationships and those connections become integral to your success, right? So, you may have heard of the PI formula, right? You have performance plus image plus exposure, right? So it's not enough to do your job very well, right?
Yeah.
Image is the personal brand. How are you being perceived by those people in your realm, in your network? And what exposure are you creating for those people to know you and to know how you lead? What connections are you making? How are you helping others in that network?
Anybody want to add anything?
I'll just say one other thing. I think that, I agree completely with Ora. It's politics with a small p, that become very, very important, the higher up you go. And you have to make also a conscious decision as to how much of it you want to play. And you certainly have to play some of it. But sometimes there are decisions or forks in the road that you'll come to where your own integrity, your ethics isn't going to allow you to play a certain game that maybe somebody else is willing to at that point. And you know what? You may suffer the consequences because you don't. To me personally, my integrity is far more important than any job. So, but I've lost out sometimes because I've taken that road, whereas other people have not. So I think it comes down to how far you're willing to play. And I'll go back to one other little anecdote. When I took my job in the Middle East, and so many people thought I was, crazy. So it was in the 80s, and I was there when the Gulf War started. So those people then said, oh, it was really crazy that she took the job. But my first day, I went to the royal court and sat down, and I was the only woman, I was the only American, and I was in my late 20s. Half the room got up and walked out. And I thought, wow, maybe those people were right, like I made the wrong decision here. But gosh, my trunk, back in the days, my trunks are here, they've come over, I'm here, I don't know how I'm getting home. By the end of my time in that job, I had won over the majority of the people because of my hard work. They realized I wasn't a spy. They saw that I wanted to do good to help the people, the kingdom, whatever. There were two men in particular who never spoke to me, two very important men. I realized, not until a long time after I left the job, that I was never going to win those two over. One, because I was an American, and he absolutely hated Americans. So nothing I could do, short of even if I gave up my citizenship, he wasn't going to like me. And the other one because I was a woman. And he was very traditional Muslim, and again, he didn't think any woman should be. Well, it didn't matter that I was an American, whatever the national. I was probably in a better place with him that I was an American as opposed to a Jordanian or some other Arab nationality. But it took me many, many years after that job to realize I just was never going to win them over. I kept saying, "What did I do wrong? Why couldn't I? What was wrong?" So because when you're making those decisions, I think the older you get and the further in your career, hopefully you're able to see, okay, who are the people that I can play ball with, number one? Who are the ones that just never going to be able to play ball with? And then how far do I want to throw the ball?
Thank you. Hi, John? I can speak loud enough. My name is Nancy Perry, class of 81. You mentioned Ora, and first of all, thank you. All three of you have been just fabulous. You mentioned Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, and I just finished reading it. It's just really wonderful. I wish somebody had written it 20, 30 years ago. But I'm really struck by some of what she was saying about, so many women are not leaning into their careers, and that's why we're not going up the glass ceiling. And I was wondering what your viewpoint on that was. I know for me personally, graduating in 81 and coming to Washington, working on Capitol Hill, working in politics as a lobbyist, I leaned in hard, and I was right there with my male counterparts until I had children. Yeah. And then wanting flexibility to have because my partner, as Sheryl Sandberg says, a lot of partners don't have the same flexibility, or their careers haven't lent it to them, or they just haven't pushed in their businesses. So then something has to give. I'm just wondering what your personal experience has been, and also if you think, I agree with her message that women need to lean into their careers, but I also don't see the answer if we lean in and then we get to those childbearing years if there's no solution.
Yeah. Do you have anything from a public policy viewpoint that you want to add to that?
I think that the unfinished business of the women's movement is all happening in the private sphere. It's hard to come up with any more public. I'm not saying there aren't some out there, but it's hard for me to think of one big public policy that would sort of make this marital inequity go away overnight. I think it's gonna have to take sort of pushes from below and a lot of private decisions that are probably on the part of men to push their own employers. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here too. First, I'm really pleased that you actually read it. What the media says, she says, is not what she says at all.
It's terrible. They misrepresent her completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's actually quite aligned with Slaughter, if you read the book. I mean, the media has just loved to pit these two against each other. Slaughter really emphasizes, more external policy that has to be put in place in order for men and women to move forward. And Sheryl, like me tonight, is actually emphasizing more of what I'll call the internal policy, the stuff inside us is what I mean by that. But I just want to remind everyone that this lean in movement is going beyond that women need to lean in, because first, after we finished with Sheryl, we got oh yes, men need to lean in too. And now companies are leaning in too. Every day there's someone else yes, we're doing it too. But I actually like that. I think what the message is that no, we can't do it by ourselves. We can't take all this responsibility. We need the men to lean in. And yes, we also need the companies to lean in. And we need social policy in some way to lean in too for all of us to move forward.
There's a book I would recommend on this subject. It's an older book. I think it was published in the early 2000s, but it's by a Duke grad named Pamela Shearer Stone, who is a sociologist at Hunter College. And she wrote a book called Opting Out, with a question mark, on the topic of women getting to a certain level, hitting their childbearing years, and then the media has portrayed it as we're opting out, we're choosing motherhood over career, when in fact it's the companies pushing the women out by not letting them be flexible, by not making any accommodations at all for the fact that the woman is the primary child caregiver. It's a very good book, and she's doing an update to it, which will come out in, I think she said in June.
That's great. Well, I ended up going to the nonprofit sector where we could get more flexibility because it was for less pay, and have 8 women employees, all who have flexible schedules working for me. So I feel like but we need to get that in the private sector, in the business world, not just in the nonprofit world. And I don't know if you all are seeing it at all, but I hope it's starting to
The one comment I'll make is I think it's great that the dialogue is happening. What I find a little bit sad is that this is really kind of the same dialogue. When I was in my 20s and was at the end of the Decade for Women conference and the people that were there on both sides of the aisle, the Bella Abzug, the Gloria Steinem, all of them, Maureen Reagan, Judy Carter, all these women that had been there and had moved things forward. And I'm in my 20s, watching, all this going on. It's not a dissimilar dialogue now that was happening back in that decade. So I'm sort of thinking, did we get to a certain point and then everybody became complacent, or things happened, or we didn't get far enough? And
I think part of it was, at least coming out in the 70s and 80s, we were told we can do it all.
Absolutely.
We can have it all. And then when we got there, we're like, wait a minute, how can I be Superwoman and be the perfect mom, be the perfect employee, the perfect boss, perfect wife? It's very hard. So I think,
Yeah, I want to add something to that because I do see, like, and this is just anecdotal evidence from some of my clients. This isn't statistically significant, but I am seeing the men lean in very different ways. Two of my male clients right now leave at 5:30 every day because their wives work, and this is the arrangement they have. Do they work later on at night? One does, one claims he doesn't, right? One of my female clients' husband is a stay-at-home father. So I'm seeing a lot of this kind of stuff that I didn't see before. And this is very encouraging to me. And the men that I know in my life want to be at home more, want to be more involved, talk about their kids, talk about not missing anything. And that they understand their wives' perspectives more than they used to. So I hope that's just like a little positive spin on some of the frustrations that we feel.
But it goes back to your point about women's organizations. And maybe this is what we lost from 85 to now. Not that there aren't out there, but people feeling the need to be a part of. And I'll give you one other little story. So at the former primary school that my children went to, a big deal is to be room mother. Okay, and people compete to be room mother at this particular school, and you have to fill out an application. And so years ago, two women who worked, one woman called the other one up and said, why don't we co-room mother and for it? So we'll put an application together. So they did to be the room mother for kindergarten. Set off a firestorm. So all of these highly educated women, and in this particular school, the bulk of them stayed at home. So there were a few that worked. And they were outraged that two women put in an application to be co-room mother. And this is all within the past decade here, so it's not that long ago. And it became a big issue because the woman who was in charge of the committee happened to live down the street from another woman. And so she said, I like it. I'm going to make these two women. And then people protested and wrote letters and said, they don't have the time. If they can't dedicate the individual time as one room mother, then they shouldn't be room mother. I use it as just, we are our own worst enemy in that this is to be room mother in your kid's class. I mean, please. So the school had to support the decision, and the two women did a fabulous job being room mother. But what still bothers me to this day is like thinking back, watching this whole scene play out in the school where my children, attended, is that these bright, intelligent women were attacking these other women who wanted to contribute, but they realized that they didn't have the time because of their jobs. So they thought of a very creative alternative. And those other women should have supported them.
I don't have a question. I just kind of wanted to articulate a point because I think it sort of ties everything together, especially what you were talking about, articulating your worth. This year I've had, this has been sort of my year of women leadership. Actually, it started when Kim asked me to be on one of her Duke alumni panels, so thanks, Kim. Sure. But first I saw Jennifer Newsom's movie, Misrepresentation, back in November, which is great, by the way. And then in December, my firm sent me to the Women in Law Leadership Academy Conference, which is put on by the ABA Women in the Profession, which was incredible. And I learned about building my own kitchen cabinet and how to articulate my goals and how to, self-assess my worth. And it was empowering. And so my firm asked me when I came back to then teach the partners what we learned about professional development at this conference. And it was a great experience because the other two women and I, we spent hours planning this presentation, and we were getting up and now we get to tell the partners everything they don't know about women leadership and how to develop us. And isn't this a great opportunity? And we got done doing this presentation, and the chairman of my firm, who started the firm in 1977 and is on his way out, is like, what a lovely story. I'm so glad that women have come full circle, back in my wife's day. And it was this idea that, now that women are allowed to become lawyers, it's over. There's nothing else. I mean, it's as though all the statistics we presented about only 15% of equity partners are women. It's like all of that, they hear what they want to hear. So this all comes back to articulating your worth and just the data of the bottom line that you help as a woman to your organization. They need to know that. And if they value you as a person, they also need to value your economic worth, because that is what is going to get childcare in the workplace. They're going to get flexible schedules. And just, I want to empower all the women in this room to just know your worth and make sure your companies know your worth, because I think that's going to solve all of our problems.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. Anybody else? Here? Oh, yes.
So I'm kind of an early career professional, and kind of figuring out actually the first question, which should be the easiest, like, what do you want? Some of figuring out where I want to go with my career seems like it should be easy, but you kind of get into a lot of do loops about, what does this mean? Like, I've kind of been opportunistic with some of my career choices, and do I want to be on this path that I've kind of see laying out before me? Are there any visioning exercises or really hard moments that you had early on about how you actually figure out what you want so you can communicate that?
Great question.
Yeah, I like that question again a lot. In the olden days, there was a lot of emphasis on the 5-year plan. You even heard about the 10-year plan. And that's not what I'm talking about when I say, what do you want? There's absolutely no way that you will know what's going to be happening to you in 5 years, right? So the old model of looking at professional success was this arrow, going this way, and first you did this, then this, and then this, then this. You may have seen this image going around the internet where it says success looks like this. You start like this, and then it's like this all over the place, and then it just keeps going up, right? So when I talk about know what you want is know what you want today. That makes it a whole lot easier. You don't need to figure out your whole life right now. Is what is speaking to you today? What conversations get your ear? What articles that you read get you excited? Where do you find yourself helping so it doesn't feel like a chore, it feels like an absolute joy, right? Focus on today. What is it you want? How do you want to share your talents with the world? That is a whole lot less intimidating than, what job do I want? What kind of career? Is it in the profit? Is it in the public? Is it nonprofit? Big, small? That's way too complicated. Start with a baby step. Today, what's turning me on? And follow that feeling, and it'll be a lot easier. I hope that's helpful.
Kristen, you're nodding. What was your experience?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I, in a million years, never would have thought I would have gotten a PhD and become a professor. Although my best friend from high school, from Denver, Colorado, who I've known since 1978, tells me that as early as 1978, oh God, we all knew you were going to be a professor. It was so obvious. Never entered my mind. I mean, this is a second career for me. I was a journalist, and I think the only job that I got intentionally was my first real job as a journalist. And I am in a dream job right now. I work at the Stanford School of Public Policy, which is the best workplace, certainly in an academic setting, in the world. And it was pure serendipity that I ended up where I am today. And so, I mean, I tell this to a lot of students, who are just along those lines, trying to map out everything. And I mean, literally, I can trace every good thing in my life to a lunch I had with a college classmate who was working in Washington, and I was underemployed and trying to find a dream job in journalism. And I called him up and I said, let's have lunch. And from that lunch in 1987 or 88, I guess, I got my break in journalism, which led to my husband, my entire retirement savings, my house, my graduate school career, my current job. Everything came from that lunch. It was not planned. So,
Suzanne, did you always know what you wanted to do?
I said that I knew what I wanted. I knew that I had a little list Okay, and I think there's something to be said for lists. So I didn't know what jobs that I wanted, but I knew I wanted to do something international. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I liked ethics, and I had I had 7 things on the list, okay? And so, I didn't know that I would have the jobs that I had, but I knew those were areas that I was interested in. And so when we were in college, back in the day, so, you didn't really have a computer and you're still typing on the typewriter. And, I had my own personal clipping service, which was my mother, and Christy can attest to this. So I had my little list of 7 things that I was interested in public policy, things like that. And my mother read 9 newspapers. And my mother would clip from those 9 newspapers things that fit into those categories because she knew I had the categories. She'd put them in a big manila envelope, and weekly she would mail them to me at college. And people would be like, "What is that?" And I'd be pulling out all these newspaper. She didn't just do it for me; she did it for all my siblings. But she should have been the CEO of a company or something. But that giving. Who had time to read, newspapers back then? And there no internet. So, but she found all the articles and opportunities, and she would say, "Apply for this," or "Someday I think you could be this." And I read every article. Christy read quite a few of them too. And that I think helped me to see what was out there. And then it was going back to your point of, becoming part of certain groups and meeting women, and clearly. Other women helping, along the way and pointing, to different opportunities. So.
Well, let's thank our panelists. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Ora's book as you head out, and please feel free to stay and network and chat with friends, meet new people, talk to our panelists. Thank you all for coming.